Hi everyone, this is Rachel from StudioUs. We're getting started with another video drawing tutorial today. We're going to take on this nice springtime butterfly. So go ahead, grab your materials, and we'll get started. Make sure you start off with a blank piece of paper as well as a drawing pencil with eraser, a large eraser to clear off big areas, and a Sharpie marker to go over your lines at the end. We're going to get started with the body shape of this butterfly. So I'm finding the midpoint on my paper and starting at about the center and tipping it over at an angle. We're just going to draw an angled oval. So once you've got your top, bottom, and sides marked out, just sketch it in. From there we're going to extend that to make the back of the butterfly a little more narrow and pointed on this one. I'm just giving myself a mark to mark the end, and then connecting it in a kind of rounded V, and then a little semicircle to make the head for the butterfly. We're going to erase those two connecting lines so we have one solid body piece for the center of that butterfly. So now I'm going to draw on my wings, so I'm marking out where I see they start, where I see they end, coming around on the body, and making sure those are even on either side. I'm going to mark out how far I see that wing going, out to the side of the paper. I'm going to give myself a couple guidelines to get that shape just right. Same on the other side, I'm going to mark out how far out I see it going, and give myself a few guidelines to get my shape. Then what I'm going to do is compare the size. So I'm comparing that first one to the second one. I see it needs to go a little longer. So I'll bring that out, clear out my other dots, and then we can draw those in. That's why I really like to use that dotted line technique. I can just erase a few dots after I make a correction instead of having to erase an entire line. There we go. We're going to add in the bottom parts of the wings, so marking out where I see it starting and ending on either side and how far out it goes. Okay, scoop down and then curve around. And then draw those in. Good to go. So I'm going to sketch out a small circle right at the bottom and between those two bottom wings. I always like to give myself a couple guide dots with circles just to make sure they stay even. And then we'll add in those antennas as well. Dotting them out, then sketching them in. Start adding in the petals for the flower. So in these inner lines, I just look at where they start and where they end in relation to the butterfly and that circle. Coming out a little farther, I want to kind of visualize where that's coming out of that wing and bring it back around. We'll sketch in the spots for the butterfly, marking out where it starts, where it ends, how far out it goes. Scooping it around. And same process for those bottom spots. we're going to add in our next petal, marking out where it starts, where it ends, and keeping it about the same length as the last petal while curving it around that center circle. Sketching in the rest of the dots on the wings. I'm watching for the relative size of these. Some are a little bigger, some are a little smaller. It's kind of like fitting puzzle pieces together. You want to make sure they all fit just right within that space. Getting that last wing. Good to go. Adding in another petal and making sure it comes out the same length. Keeps curving around. More dots on those wings. Just looking at how they fill in those empty spaces and sketching them in. We've got a couple more petals added here. We're going to mark out our length, curve it around. Same for the next one. Should be a little past halfway around the flower at this point. And then adding in some small detail dots on those lower wings. And a big dot on each of the upper wings to continue that pattern. Even more detail dots. These are super detailed wings. And then a couple more petals using the same process. Mark out the length. Curve it around. We're getting into some really small details on the wings, finishing out a couple more petals on that flower. And getting those small dots up on the top wings. I always look at how these are grouped to make sure I'm getting them in pretty much the right place. With the smaller dots, you can have a little fun and add a little variation if you want to. There we go. Adding in the last couple of petals coming around the flower. Another set of dots up the top of those two top wings. Finally, we've got a long row of dots coming down the sides of both of those top wings. I'm going to take my time and make it as accurate to the reference image as possible here. But if you just want to sketch in some dots and fill in that space, that's totally okay too. Just make sure they're kind of different sizes and filling in little gaps in the space. using the different petals as a guide to help me figure out where these leaves go. So I'm making sure there's an empty space, moving on to the next leaf, empty space, moving on to the next leaf. And that's our drawing. We're going to grab our Sharpie, carefully go over these lines. I'll speed stuff up so we don't spend forever watching me do this, but make sure you're taking your time. Be very careful to stay on your pencil lines. Really take your time with all of these little detail dots. And make sure to give yourself a little space between each one so that you can still fit a colored pencil in there and those Sharpie lines aren't quite touching. That'll let us get the color in there and make it look really vibrant and give it a good pop once we're all done. We'll get the antennas and we'll be all set with the Sharpie lines. Take your eraser, clear all those pencil lines off, and we'll start coloring. So we're going to grab a light turquoise and draw a little bubble around our shape so that we can outline it thoroughly. I always like to outline every drawing I'm doing just to make sure I have a little buffer when I'm filling in that big empty background so that I don't have to worry about stopping right on the Sharpie line. I can run into my outline layer and not worry about anything. It also helps you focus just on those edge lines so that you can really get in there, get right up in those corners, and make sure you've got a thorough coat of color on everything. So we'll finish that outline up, and then we're going to fill in the background. I always like to get the outside edge on the paper first, and then fill in that big empty space. Make sure you take breaks to keep your pencil nice and sharp. You don't want it to get down to a nub where you're pressing harder because that will dent your paper. When you're using colored pencil to fill in a big area, you don't want to push hard because that's going to leave a lot of streaks. What I'm doing here is pushing lightly and wiggling over the same area until the color builds up. So you can see my hand kind of wiggling like crazy. And that's building that color up more and more as I go over it to make sure that we're getting lots of color without causing too much pressure to dent the paper or make a really dark streak. And you can see by going softly it helps blend together those colors a little more so it layers up nice and evenly. Grab a yellow and just get the little highlight on that flower. And go in with a golden yellow and fill in the rest of it. Finally an orange to get the little shadow on the other side. I'm going to go in with a pale orange and get just those lightest highlights on those butterfly wings. I'm very careful to work around the spots so that I get a smooth line even where the spots are. Really make sure you check and watch where these are going. Don't want to put it on the wrong side. If you do, grab an eraser, clear it off. We're going back in with our plain orange, filling in all the rest of those gaps between our spots. Gotta be really careful around the spots on the butterfly. Most of them are black, so if we get a little bit of color in there, we can cover it right up with that really dark black color. But if we get it in a white spot, it's going to be harder to clear out, so we want to make sure we're taking our time, being careful around those edges. We'll finish up that last little bit of orange, careful to get in between all those little spots. There we're going to go in with the red orange and get just a few of those little shadows up on the side of the body and along the bottoms of the wings, wherever we see them. Look really closely at the reference image and try to find those darkest spots. Mostly they stay right next to the body. I'm going to go in with a tan. I'm going to outline just that slim little highlight along the side of the butterfly's body. From there I'm going in with a light brown, filling in the rest of that body. Still making sure to build up that color nice and dark, even on the small parts. Finally, a dark brown. On the opposite side, we'll get a little bit of a shadow. There we're going to grab a black, color in the two dots on the antennas, and we'll start filling in the black spots on the body. Careful to look out for the little white spots, especially in those little dots. Make sure you're checking your reference image, tracking which ones stay white, which ones we color in dark. That will have our butterfly done. Be ready to move on to the flower. So I'm going to take a light purple colored pencil and get the highlights on each of the edges. If you don't have a light purple, you can also just press really lightly with your normal purple colored pencil to get a light color. From there I'm taking the darker purple pretty thorough coat on there and making sure that as I color this in, I'm coloring in dark enough to make the dark purple stand out from that light purple highlight. A lot of times we push a little softer when we're filling in a big space than a little space. So if we color in the highlight on just a little bit, it'll end up looking darker than the big color that we're filling in. Get all those tiny little petals and the parts underneath the butterfly. And then I'm going to go in with the same dark purple pencil and use lots of pressure to build up that color even thicker and create those shadows we see in the darkest parts of the flower. Grab a light green and get the highlight on each of the leaves, just a little sliver on each one. A regular green to fill in the rest of the leaf. Still being careful to watch out for those highlights. You can see that I outline them first and then fill it in. And then we'll grab a dark green for our shadows. And that'll wrap up our project. Hope you had a great time, and we'll see you on the next one.